You cannot deny it. The facts speak for themselves. You're dealing here with demons. I identify those who planned, thought up, and then actually carried out these crimes with Satan.
In August 2005 in northern Italy, the trial began of 5 young people accused of a series of brutal ritualistic murders. The bodies of 4 victims have already been unearthed, and they're suspected of further crimes.
Since the very first moment we understood this was the most ferocious crime in the last 50 years in Italy. No apparent motive. We don't know how and why. We don't know why. The presence of Satan.
The parents of the victims have learned that their children had been drawn into a satanic sect.
We have suffered. We have sunk into the abyss, into the depths of hell.
And the parents have also had to accept that something as simple as the music their children listen to may have led them to their deaths.
These are normal families. These are normal families. So this thing could happen to anybody.
Not for the first time, extreme heavy metal music and its preoccupations with violence and Satanism has found itself in the dock. Infliction are a well-known band on the Milan metal scene. They've been recording and gigging for nearly 10 years, playing a type of heavy metal music called death metal. Like many bands, they got together when they were teenagers. Back in 1996, they were looking for a bass player.
We met Fabio in 96? 96, through our former bass player. He seemed to be the right kind of person for us. So we said, hey, come and gig with us.
14-year-old Fabio Tollis soon became the lead singer of Infliction, as well as the bassist. And like most parents, Fabio's father, Michele, was not sure quite how to react.
To be honest, it was just noise to me. I wouldn't let them practice here at home, so they used to practice in the garage or in the basement. Anyway, I have to say that they were good. In their crowd, some of the young girls got really worked up about it, shouting, Fabio. Of course, we were pleased, very pleased.
I'm glad Fabio was part of this. The start of our career was based on him.
As the driving force behind Infliction, Fabio was beginning to influence the band's musical direction.
Classic heavy metal, Iron Maiden, Ozzy, that was our passion. With Fabio, our music was a bit more brutal. We were finding our way, and he used to listen to a more brutal style.
Fabio's biggest musical influence was Florida death metal band Deicide. And his hero was their frontman, Glenn Benton.
Ever since I was a little kid, my aunt used to call me evil little bastard. That's just been my persona since I was a little kid. And I can't get rid of it.
Deicide were among the pioneers of death metal, which emerged in the late 1980s. A faster, harder version of traditional heavy metal.
The term heavy metal, you know, described bands like Black Sabbath and, you know, Zeppelin and stuff like that. And for me, you know, growing up, we wanted to outdo that stuff. You know, be heavier than that. And that was what, you know, there was no such thing as death metal when we started writing this stuff.
Fuck you, and when Satan rules this world!
As well as Deicide, bands like Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel, and Autopsy pushed heavy metal to new extremes. Their lyrics often dealt with demons, sexual violence, mutilation, and necrophilia. Deicide specialized in the occult. Glenn Benton is a self-professed Satanist, to the point of having an upside-down cross branded into his forehead.
I'm not going to deny what I am. You know, people want me to deny, oh, hey, I believe in what I believe in, okay? If Satan came down right now and God was, like, you know, it's like God's over here and Satan's over here, I can tell you right now, I want to go where all my friends are going, and they ain't going with this guy.
One song in particular has become Deicide's trademark anthem.
I want to dedicate this one to all your moms and dads and great-grandmams and all that shit. It's called Kill the Christians.
I hear the chorus comes to me first, and that's the first thing came to me was Kill the Christians.
Not surprisingly, Kill the Christians didn't play well in Middle America. Over the years, Deicide have been accused of inciting teenagers to commit violence.
Do I want people to go out and kill Christians on my behalf? No. No. Hate them, yes. Kill them when the time is right.
Fabio's lyrics mirrored the bands he listened to.
His lyrics were about the occult, but also about dreams. It was all just for effect, not something to be taken seriously.
Rebellion, you know? It's all about rebellion for kids. I like the fact that it pissed my mom and dad off, the music I listened to. I remember my dad coming home from work one day, and I was listening to the SOD album. I was like 16, 17 years, I was like 17 years old. And the song Pussy Whip was on. And the chorus goes, pussy whip, don't you know you're a pussy whip? And I remember my dad coming home, what the fuck is this pussy whip shit? Turn it off, turn it off. And I think a lot of it is the same thing, you know? You know, when mom and dads come home from work and they got me in the room going, kill the Christians, and all the other shit, you know, it pisses moms and dads off. And kids like to rebel.
For Fabio Tollis, like any teenager, rebellion meant increasingly staying out late and drinking with his friends.
At 13 or 14, he was still a child and stayed at home in the evenings. After he started with this music, we were more or less obliged to let him have a bit more freedom. He started going out on Saturdays to his usual places, like the Midnight Pub.
The Midnight Pub is the center of the metal scene in Milan. At the Midnight, Fabio was now meeting a new group of friends outside his band Infliction. These were people that his parents didn't know so well, many of them older than Fabio. Through them, Fabio became involved in another band. He set up Ferocity with a boy called Mario Machioni.
We said, let's form a band in the style of Deicide, an American death metal band. He went for it at once. The idea behind playing this type of music was to pump up your adrenaline, to cross boundaries and go beyond the limit.
For Ferocity, crossing boundaries increasingly meant experimenting with the occult.
Fabio was very attracted to the idea of Satanism, which metal music was about. He was fascinated by these things.
Some of Fabio's behavior began to give his parents cause for concern.
My wife happened to be in the bathroom when Fabio was taking a shower, and she noticed some marks on his shoulder. They were clearly left by human teeth, and there were also cigarette burns on his arm.
Even I don't know what suddenly started to happen, the mania for self-harm. We cut ourselves, we smashed things against ourselves. Maybe it was a show of strength between him and me, I don't know.
With hindsight, we know that what he told us wasn't true. He said there'd been a fight and we completely believed him at the time.
On Saturday the 17th of January 1998, Fabio went to the midnight pub as usual. He was 16 years old, and for the first time he phoned home saying he wanted to stay out for the night with a girl he knew called Chiara Marino. His father was having none of it.
I said, get on the underground the same time as usual and come home, no messing around. Okay, Dad, I understand.
Worried by the tone of Fabio's voice, Michele drove into Milan to fetch his son.
Of course, when I got there, they weren't there. Someone said, yes, he was here with Chiara. They went to make a phone call. They're not back yet.
When Fabio and Chiara failed to come home the next morning, their parents immediately called the police. Over the following days, they contacted everyone who knew them.
He said, do you know where Fabio is? I said, no, we're expecting him at rehearsals. I thought, he's struck lucky. He's gone off to spend a couple of nights with this Chiara. I certainly didn't imagine anything sinister.
E qui ci sono tutte foto di Fabio da quando era da più piccolo fino all'ultimo momento.
C'è la foto di Fabio? Riesci a vederla? L'orefice, portate la foto? Non ricordo. L'unico che mi è rimasto.
The police said that Fabio and Chiara had probably run off together. But to Fabio's family, this made no sense. He was happy at home and doing well at school. So as the days turned into weeks with no sign of his son, Michele began to investigate Fabio's other life, the world of heavy metal.
E così, qui c'è il suo angolo con le varie cassette, saranno circa 150, 200, una cinquantina di dischetti, di CD musicali, e di cui comincio a prendere in mano queste cassette, comincio a farmele tradurre da mia figlia. Questa qui per esempio è una copertina di un CD dei Cannibal Corpse, uno vile, ecco il titolo. E così vengono fuori delle cose, i testi scritti sulle copertine sono allucinanti, vi parla di squartamenti, anche quest'altro per esempio, che cos'è questo qui? Dismember addirittura, che qui per l'appunto si vede un corpo umano squartato. Per esempio quest'altro qui sono i Decide, letteralmente genocidio degli dei. Ecco, questo per esempio era uno dei complessi di cui Fabio apprezzava di più. Dopo di questo qui abbiamo un ultimo che è uno dei più estremi, riconosciuti e dichiarati, il titolo Hell Awaits, con la famosa stella a 5 punte, che poi sono gli Slayer.
Michele began a journey of discovery that was to take him to heavy metal concerts across Europe.
Partire da gruppetti.
I went to see them all, from the very small groups whose names I found among Fabio's papers, to the larger, more famous groups.
Come gruppi anche più famosi, per esempio.
For example, I went to see Slayer.
Concerti degli Slayer.
I saw Mayhem and Pantera.
Dei Pantera.
I went to Iron Maiden, Deicide.
Dei Deicide. Glenn Benton, con lui ci parlo.
I spoke to Glenn Benton with the help of a young man who interpreted for me. I explained what I was doing and who I was looking for. That my son was a great fan of his and so on.
Era un suo ammiratore e così via.
I think I met the father backstage at one of the shows. But his kid was missing or something like that. I think I remember telling him that I hope he comes back, and he's probably just off with his buddies. I don't think he spoke a lick of English, and there was somebody interpreting for him.
And he signed the magazine I had in my hand, which had his photograph in it. He said to me, when Fabio returns home, you can show him this.
Glielo faccio vedere.
As well as talking to the performers, Michele handed out leaflets and put pictures of Fabio in metal magazines. Several times there were reported sightings.
I remember the episode somewhere near Bergamo, I think, when he went out convinced that it was Fabio. They'd made these phone calls and I had prepared signs saying welcome home, and I was all happy. And I remember the disappointment when he called me and told me that it wasn't Fabio.
As his search went on, Michele began to learn more about the people his son had been hanging around with.
When I was sort of poking around, rummaging around in his rucksack among his books and things, I found lots of these people's names, so I made a note of some of them. Certain names kept cropping up as being people he saw a lot of.
Machioni, Leoni, Guerrieri, Volpe. Il tempo libero lo passavo con queste persone qui e sin dentro.
Fabio spent all his free time with these people, and I became more and more convinced that they had to know something at least.
Sicuramente qualcosa.
So Michele began to dig a little deeper. He began to talk to other people in the Milan metal scene. It emerged that this group was bound together by more than just music. They were involved with the occult. The parents of Chiara Marino, the girl who had disappeared with Fabio, discovered satanic texts and icons in their daughter's room. Slowly, Michele built up a dossier of information. Names, addresses and photographs of Fabio's friends. Over the next 6 years, he became convinced that his son's disappearance was connected to a satanic sect. On the 25th of January 2004, police were called to a chalet in a village outside Milan.
We started with the interior of the chalet. The lights were still on. The table was still laid with 2 plates untouched and 3 glasses of sparkling wine half drunk. Something odd had happened here. In the greenhouse, we saw hands jutting out of the earth, some tufts of hair.
The police had discovered the half-buried body of a local girl called Mariangela Pezzotta. An autopsy revealed she had been shot, then buried while still alive. Details of the murder made the local news.
I heard the news that a girl from Somma Lombardo had been murdered. It wasn't so much the news item itself as the name, Andrea Volpe.
Andrea Volpe.
The same evening, we received a phone call from a certain Michele Tollis, somebody we'd never heard of.
I said, I haven't come here to give you a hand with the problems you're facing. I'm here to add to your problems.
Michele handed his dossier on Fabio's friends, including Volpe, to the police. Working on this information, they mounted a surveillance operation, tapping many of their phones. And the police began to interrogate Volpe about Satanism and about the disappearance of Fabio and Chiara.
We put pressure on Volpe, suggesting to him that we knew about other crimes he'd committed. It took some time, but he told us that we were basically right. The 2 kids had been killed during a satanic ritual, and their bodies had been buried in a wood in Somma Lombardo, and he could show us where they were.
For 15 days, police and forensic teams scoured the area, as Volpe tried to remember where the bodies were hidden. Finally, in May 2004, more than 6 years after they disappeared, the bodies of Fabio Tollis and Chiara Marino were found.
e scarica la bomba.
It was a bombshell.
Apocalisse.
The end of the world.
After 6 years, Michele Tollis was finally able to bury his son. Police began to round up Fabio's friends. And Andrea Volpe began to reveal details of a strange satanic cult. This had gone way beyond listening to death metal music.
La testimonianza del Volpe è stata agghiacciante.
Volpe's revelations were quite chilling. The first thing he said was that this sect existed and that it was called the Beasts of Satan.
Bestie di Satana.
He described incredible, disturbing facts. They would meet in woody areas or in abandoned factories. They would draw the pentacle, the five-pointed star. The leaders of the sect would each stand on a point of the star. They would have a picture of the person to be cursed. They would drip blood on it, and then they would invoke Satan and curse that person.
Other members of the Beasts of Satan sect also began to talk to the police. Fabio's friend Mario had been the group's spiritual link to the forces of darkness.
We believed we were in contact with demons, and we submitted to those demons, which was a completely mad thing to do. We lived in our own world, which had nothing to do with the outside world.
As the facts emerged, much of Italy wondered just how this group of boys could have gone so far off the rails. After all, they looked like millions of young heavy metal fans across the world. Italy is not the only country to have questioned the effects of extreme heavy metal on its kids. In Norway, just like everywhere else, boys fall in love with playing the guitar, fast and furious. Adrian is 13 and has already been playing the electric guitar for 2 years.
If I play some love songs and all that shit, you don't learn so much on the guitar, I think. But if you play this music, you can do everything.
And here too, parents have to learn how to deal with more than just the noise.
We started with the upside down cross, and he had that pentagram, and he had those needles, spikes. And he wanted black clothes, only black.
It was a big change in his life.
This is a Norwegian band, one of my favorites, one of the best Norwegian death metal bands.
So what do they sing about? What kind of stuff?
Gore and, eating people, kill people, all things like that.
But what's all this imagery on the front?
I think it's blood. Blood look like someone has been killed or something. I like them, but I don't know, maybe too brutal. I don't know, but the music is cool.
For fans of brutal music, Norway is something of a mecca, because this is the birthplace of an even more extreme music: Norwegian black metal. Playing at a festival in southern Norway are Mayhem, the high priests and founders of black metal.
We don't pretend to be anybody that we are not. I think that this is what I respect and what I like in other bands and my own idols, music idols, is that they don't fuck up, you know, that they stick to the master plan.
From the start, the master plan was simple.
We're going to do a song now that I think you all know. About blood and Satan and war. Clone carnage!
By the early 90s, the Norwegians decided that death metal was too soft and too commercial. For black metal musicians, the Satanism and the violence were to become part of the lifestyle. One of Mayhem's early singers, aptly named Dead, blew his brains out with a shotgun. Another Mayhem recruit was equally disastrous. Varg Vikernes, also known as Count Grisnacht, played bass on one early album. His career was curtailed when he murdered the band's lead guitarist in a frenzied knife attack. The killings made Mayhem notorious across Norway, and the legend of black metal was born. 13 years later, there are no signs of compromise.
The pigheads, I hate the pigheads, you know, because like now, today is really hot. We got them, 10 of them in plastic bags, and they start rotting and smelling. But we can't just say, okay, we don't do it anymore, because the fans, they want to have the pigheads, you know. I mean, concert with Mayhem without pigheads, it's not a Mayhem concert, you know.
Mayhem fans have always taken their music very seriously. Some might say, too seriously. The lyrics of black metal have always been, amongst other things, violently anti-Christian. For almost 100 years, Holmenkollen Chapel had been one of Oslo's most famous landmarks.
It was a very nice and old chapel. It was a chapel royal family used. I think it was a chapel which meant a lot to many other people in Oslo.
On the 24th of August 1992, a young man walked into Holmenkollen Chapel to deliver a blow to conservative Christian Norway. It was the culmination of a spate of unexplained church fires.
Before 1992, there were just one church burning each year, mostly because of lightning. In 1992, we had 9 churches which burned, and then we realized it was a problem.
Norwegian police soon found out that black metal musicians were behind the arsons. Several were jailed, including Mayhem bass player Varg Vikernes, who got 24 years for burning down Holmenkollen Chapel and the murder of the band's guitarist. But the burnings didn't stop. In the space of 5 years, more than 40 churches, many in small rural communities, were reduced to ashes. In the arrests that followed, the police found that the culprits had a number of things in common.
They were young, 16 to 22, 23. They were lonely people. Many of them told us that before they were burning churches, they have been listening over hours and hours and hours on black metal music.
Holmenkollen Chapel was rebuilt at huge cost, but other historic churches had been lost for good. But of course the kids loved it.
This means kill Christianity. It had been much trouble with these T-shirts.
Yeah, in Norway?
Yeah, people don't like that kind of stuff, you know, Norwegian people. I think that is a reason for the black metal scene are very big in Norway, because of that story with killings and all the black metal dudes, church firing and everything like that, so...
Black metal has now spread across the world. Bands like Satyricon and Cradle of Filth can sell hundreds of thousands of albums. Some people say black metal is Norway's largest cultural export. And the band who started the whole thing aren't complaining.
People we scared are scared, and the people who understood the joke are still there, just smiling about the whole thing. It's not totally a joke. It's of course it's something that the government couldn't control. Then we are enemies of the state. They try to keep us down, and by doing that, what happened? Cult fucking legends, you know.
This is where I want stage. And now it's going to
Mayhem are now playing to a new generation of fans who've grown up on the legend. The band see no problem with the violence of their music. In fact, they think it serves a social purpose.
We are like what do you call that? When you take the air out of the balloon, the thing that's holding back all the air, ventil. What's the English word for that? Valve. Valve. I think we are some sort of a valve for a lot of people, and they like it. You know, they like to be on the edge. They like on the edge music.
Like many young metal fans, Adrian plays in his own band. He's the lead singer and writes some of the lyrics.
A movie called Tearing Carnage. It's death metal, you know, like cutting people and all stuff like that. But it's black death metal.
When I read those things, I thought it was terrible, and it is terrible. What he's writing is the pictures that he draws is terrible, but it is so far from reality, very far from reality.
You don't take this seriously?
No, it's all fantasy. No. It's just like a movie. It's like living in a fantasy.
That assures me that he's not going to be like that. It's not easy to become like that.
In Italy, the Beasts of Satan case has become one of the most sensational trials in recent times. 7 years after his son's death, Michele Tollis is coming to the end of his search for justice. Many of the suspicions he harbored while his son was missing have been proved right. The people with Fabio on the night he died had been the boys from his death metal band Ferocity: Nicola Sapone, Andrea Volpe, and his boyhood friend, Mario Machioni.
The plan that evening was to go and carry out another of our usual tests of courage, but intended metaphorically, like something which involved a sacrifice to the devil. You had to risk your life. We drank a bit, we smoked a bit, then left the midnight. On the journey, we listened to Dayside, I think. When we reached the village where the woods are, in Sommalombardo, these drugs confuse you. They distort your memory. I have absolutely no memory of how things went.
Mario Machioni has changed his story of what happened that night several times. From other testimony and evidence, police believe they have pieced together what really happened.
Nicola ha preso Marino Chiara.
Nicola Sapone held Chiara Marino from behind, stabbing her in the stomach. At the same time, Volpe began stabbing Fabio Tollis.
And
Mario Machioni hit him with a hammer on the top of his skull. The two kids were then thrown into the hole.
I
remember I got up from the ground as though I'd fallen, covered in blood. I had the hammer there near me.
It seems
that Nicola Sapone then got into the hole and slit their throats. And because they were still moaning, he stuffed some chestnut husks in their mouths. Then they filled in the hole and urinated on the grave.
I still didn't believe it had all happened.
Mario Machioni is serving 19 years for the murders of Fabio and Chiara. Andrea Volpe received a 30-year sentence.
I don't have any feelings of revenge, bitterness or hatred. My greatest satisfaction, although I say that in inverted commas, because nothing will bring Fabio back to us. Nothing can take us back 8 years. My satisfaction lies in knowing that we've stopped them. Stopped them.
In January 2006, 5 more members of the sect were convicted of murder and given long prison sentences. And the motives behind the crimes have finally emerged. Chiara was murdered as a ritual sacrifice to the devil. Fabio had to die for the simple reason that he had become skeptical and had begun to mock the other members of the group for their satanic beliefs. But the murders were not the only crimes to be linked to the beasts of Satan. Andrea Bontade was a drummer in another metal band. After he failed to turn up on the night of Fabio's murder, Volpe and others used psychological terror to pressure him into committing suicide.
The story was really shocking, so to say. But this was only the first story. There was one who died in another crash, another car crash, very strange. There was another one who was found in the forest.
Lombardo committed suicide in the cemetery of Legnano by setting himself on fire, also without any obvious plausible reason.
All in all, we found something like 7 young people, and we are talking of a small town. 7 young people, 20 years, 25 years old, all of them linked by one thing, that all of them spent some months or some weeks with these people.
The Beasts of Satan case has generated feverish speculation in Italy, not least about how much influence the heavy metal music may have had on the crimes.
You can count on the fingers of one hand the people who've done what we've done. Of the millions of people who listen to metal, no one, I repeat, no one has ever been involved in anything like this. In fact, many more people have done things like this who've not listened to metal at all.
No one can contradict me when I say that heavy metal and Satanism are closely linked. They go hand in hand, they're inseparable, without a shadow of a doubt.
For some, there is a battle to be joined for the very soul of the nation's youth.
Signore Gesù, per tutti quei giovani che vivono nel vuoto, nella solitudine, nella disperazione, per i tanti ragazzi che sono incappati nelle sette sataniche, per coloro che seguono una musica sbagliata che porta alla distruzione mentale, alla distruzione interiore, spirituale. Spirito Santo.
This next song is for those motherfuckers in the mosh pit, okay? Nail to that fucking drum!
Just 10 miles from the scene of the Beasts of Satan murders, the annual heavy metal festival attracts bands from as far afield as Sweden and Germany. People here don't seem particularly interested in having their souls saved. Metal fans consider themselves to be one big family. People here come from all walks of life.
My intention in playing this music isn't so that I can mix with these kids in order to convert them. I go simply because I like the music.
Hanno voglia di vivere bene e fan proprio nulla di nulla per fare che avvenga che questo sta.
Friar Cesare has been a Capuchin monk for more than 30 years. His Catholic taste in music is not diminished by the anti-Christian imagery of many of the metal bands.
The pseudo-satanic, pseudo-demonic trappings in the metal scene are an affectation. It's posturing, which in most cases is just designed to shock.
Al black metal e al death metal.
In black metal and death metal, we are dealing with what the words themselves describe.
Significano,
dark messages of death and violence.
Di morte, di violenza.
Supported by many in the Catholic Church, Don Aldo has gone so far as to set up a hotline for parents worried about Satanism. And he has rescued youngsters from the clutches of heavy metal.
Spirito Santo, entra nei loro cuori, nelle loro menti. Guariscili, come sei entrato nel cuore di un giovane che è qui presente, che un giorno ha avuto la forza, ha spezzato tutti i dischi, i CD, li ha gettati. E se la musica si fa
And if music makes itself an instrument of nefarious deeds and death,
di realtà,
it should be stopped.
Deve essere fermata.
I don't think the kids who are into metal are so stupid as to take everything they say literally. And in any case, the metal scene is about the music.
Friar Cesare may not be here to convert people, but there are some who definitely are.
We are Satanists.
What does that actually mean in your music?
It means, apart from the music is a channel that we use to spread our beliefs.
Dissection are a black metal band from Sweden. Their credentials in the world of extreme metal are impeccable.
I was sentenced to 10 years in prison for accessory to murder. Well, I was involved in a killing of a man. Satanism is dangerous, of course. And if you choose to rise up against something, then you have to use violence. And I say that people, you know, will always kill each other.
Most bands are just playing with this Satanism thing, just because, of course, it always attracted kids. And what we're actually doing with this section is to shape again the black and death metal scene so that it becomes something more serious and not just, you know, bullshit for kids that just want to have fun and drink beer, you know.
Worries about the effects of heavy metal are nothing new. In the 1980s, people claimed to have found hidden messages in Ozzy Osbourne's lyrics. From Elvis Presley to punk rock, parents have worried that music could turn well-adjusted young people into delinquents. But research suggests that these concerns may be missing the point.
Most kids who listen to this music are okay. There's no problem with it. There are probably 10 million teenagers listening to heavy metal, and most of them are just fine. The concern is if you come at it the other way. There are kids who are problematic for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with the music. They're alienated from their families, they're alienated from school, they're experiencing depression, possibly all of these things, and now suddenly they are listening to the kind of music, the sound of which and the lyrics of which are violent. The lyrics are misogynist, the lyrics are depressed and depressing, the lyrics are satanic, they talk about suicide, they talk about self-mutilization, the very kinds of things we're worried that these problem kids will get engaged in. What the music may well be doing is simply reinforcing beliefs that they might have started with in the first place.
Music fashions come and go, but for 30 years heavy metal has endured, becoming ever more extreme.
We don't play rock and roll, we don't play synth, we just play black metal. End of fucking story.
Norwegian black metalers Mayhem are currently recording their 18th album, though they may have other career opportunities.
That's what we're going to do, just sell, you know, photographed pig heads.
And as long as extreme metal music continues, parents will face the decision of what to do about it.
And you have to go along with them, I think. I think it is very important to not to just deny it or say that you're not supposed to do that and this, but to find out what it is, how this is, what is he thinking, and why is he fascinated? What is it with this music?
My kid listens to this music. He has no desire to go out and rob anybody or kill anybody, okay? I say don't blame people like me, Manson, and people, you know, that do what we do. We never, come on, we never, you know, said, hey, we're gonna be role models for your kids. That ain't what this is about. It's about entertainment, you know, I mean, and even, you know, some of the biggest assholes in the world are great entertainers, you know.
It's all about the fucking metal, man. That's all it's about.